Hello there friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. It's said that the Jedi are the keepers of peace, guardians of the Republic. But how do they get this role? Who gave them this power, and is there anything keeping that power in check? Well, from the very beginning, the relationship between the Jedi and the Republic was doomed to fail. Not because either side had bad intentions or anything like that. If anything, there was just way too much trust being given to the Jedi by the Republic, and this led to the Jedi perhaps believing in themselves and their moral authority a bit too much as well. See, the Republic was founded around 25,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, and this moment directly coincides with the fall and collapse of the Rakatan Infinite Empire just 2 centuries earlier. The majority of the inhabitants living in early Republic space were former slaves of this empire, and they all came from various species and backgrounds. I think the universal servitude and collective suffering that all these species underwent really helped them become more empathetic and compassionate when they were setting up the Galactic Constitution, which would serve as a guideline for everything else that followed. The Republic established the rights of sentience and banished slavery from all of its territory. This would serve as the basis of a system that would be able to incorporate hundreds, if not thousands, of different species all under one system of governance. Perhaps it's because every slave species within the Rakatan Infinite Empire suffered equally, and so the Republic never really had a huge problem with cultural violence or sectarian violence. It seems like once you've been subjugated for such a long time, it brings out a sense of humility about your own place in the galaxy. And so the people of the early Republic period got along quite well, and instead they focused on trade, exploration, and industry, instead of their own identities and what made them different from one another. And so the Jedi Order would see the Republic as a force for good, and even though the Jedi were pretty apolitical and tended to focus more on, issues concerning the Force, but some more grounded Jedi realized that large government organizations like the Republic could create stability and peace in ways that a smaller organization like the Jedi never could. It became very apparent for many Jedi leaders that they needed to support the Republic and help it grow and maintain stability. At the same time, the Republic, which always was more mercantile rather than militant, was struggling to find a balance between its security needs and its bigger desire for economic expansion. There needed to be something more than local planetary defense forces. They wanted some type of federalized peacekeeping or military force. And the public sentiment was really pointing towards the Jedi to be that solution. People in the Republic tended to view the Jedi with awe. Their discipline, their powers, their steadfast dedication to upholding their moral code made them seem different from everyone else. They were above the law because they knew better than to break the law. They were above morality because they were the ones who understood what was right or wrong. And who's to say the Jedi from this period of time weren't amazing? It's very possible that they were exactly what people saw them as: heroes, protectors, completely selfless guardians of the Republic. And as the Jedi became incorporated with the Republic's peacekeeping structure, public opinion would only rise even higher. These Jedi were seen as a force of superheroes that protected the weak from evil. Heck, the Republic was so desperate for the Jedi's favor that they even gifted the Jedi Order a piece of prime real estate on Coruscant, which is where the Jedi Temple would eventually be built. This is nothing short of idol worship, in my opinion. And any organization without checks and balances will, in time, abuse the power given to them. I don't care who you are, how righteous people think you are, it will just happen. It's human nature. And contrary to what a lot of people think, having absolute power, having no one question you or challenge your views is a terrible thing. It creates complacency, it creates blind spots. It really kind of isolates you from what the truth is. And that's how the Jedi operated. They worked alongside the Judicial Department with peacekeepers who were beholden to the Republic's laws and used Republic naval assets for transportation. The Jedi were given jurisdiction to uphold the law and detain citizens in Republic space. Heck, they could even execute dangerous criminals in the streets. They were judge, jury, and executioner, and the lack of accountability they had over their actions was something a judge from Megacity would have been envious of. And if these Jedi did anything illegal or not so cool, they were untouchable. There was no mechanism put into place to actually punish them. This is why during the Clone Wars, when Ahsoka Tano was accused of blowing up the Jedi Temple, she had to be released from the Jedi Order first before she could be brought in front of a military tribunal. Yeah, you see, the Jedi were actually given the opportunity to first self-police their own individuals before the larger justice system took a look at them. But instead of having a normal court session to properly determine the innocence of an individual, you just have a group of council members judge whether the individual is guilty or not. There are no witnesses, no cross-examinations. It's a flawed procedure based a lot more on feelings and, prior relationships rather than fact and objectivity. Now, Ahsoka's supposed crimes were extremely high profile. They also killed several non-Jedi citizens in Coruscant, and so the public naturally wanted the main suspect Ahsoka to stand trial at a military or civilian tribunal. The Jedi were put into a difficult position because of this. If they decided to protect Ahsoka, it could further degrade public opinion of the Jedi and make them seem like they were above the law. And so the Jedi decided to sacrifice her and expel her from the Order. I think the Jedi Order would have been better off without this power. I mean, this sense of immunity just makes them seem different from everyone else, which of course attracts unwanted attention. And that's something that Palpatine would exploit in the future. And this sense of moral authority and immunity to consequences not only set up the Jedi for some difficult PR situations, it also affected how the Jedi saw themselves. While your typical Jedi isn't as openly arrogant as, say, a get-rich-quick guy on the internet would be, they do suffer from the moral hazard of not being held accountable for their actions. Self-policing can really only go so far. For instance, you have individuals like Mace Windu, who pledges his allegiance to the Republic and claims to love democracy and the systems that govern the galaxy. But when it's revealed that the elected Supreme Chancellor of the Republic is a Sith Lord, Mace Windu is all like, "Not my Supreme Chancellor." His allegiance to the Jedi outweighs his allegiance to the democratic system, which allows him to carry out what essentially is a Jedi-backed coup without even thinking about the consequences of his actions in the long run. This is really the Jedi's problem from the very beginning. They're like a child who's been told that they're special their entire lives, when in fact they actually are not that special, and they do have a lot of flaws that need checks and balances in normal systems of opposition. Yes, the Jedi spent a lot of time meditating and doing good all around the galaxy, but they were not really in moral authority on anything. They're just an organization of mutants with superpowers, and those superpowers made them dangerous, and so extra attention and care was placed into nurturing these young Force users so that they wouldn't turn into murdering psychopaths when they got older. However, there was never a guarantee that the actual system would work, and that the Jedi system wouldn't fail and produce monsters like Anakin, or even individuals like Mace Windu, who from the Jedi Council's point of view is the ideal Jedi Master, but if you take a closer look at his beliefs, he might hold some very anti-democratic viewpoints. It really doesn't matter if Palpatine is Satan himself. The Republic has a system for impeachment, for putting the Chancellor on trial for being Satan, or for whatever crimes he's committed. I mean, even as a Sith Lord, he does have rights within the system, unless there's still some old Republic era laws about not being allowed to be Sith and also hold office within the Republic. I think that was actually a thing back in Legends. I don't know if that's still a thing during this period of time. Just looks like a coup to me. I almost think it would be better if the Jedi maintained their anti-Sith stance, but just held those views as an independent organization with no ties to the Republic at all. But no, because the Jedi are so closely aligned with the Republic, not only have they created a lot of problems for themselves, they've also attracted several attacks on the Republic because the Sith were aiming for them. At one point, one really has to ask themselves, as the Sith are attacking Coruscant for like the 7th time, is the Jedi protecting the Republic, or is the Republic sheltering the Jedi? And all throughout Jedi history, we've seen the Jedi take advantage of the Republic's glowing opinion of them. For instance, at the end of the Pious Day faction's rule over the Republic, the Jedi would actually install one of their own members into the chancellorship position to encourage a bit more peace and stability during this very politically uncertain time in the Republic's history. The individual who was in charge of the chancellorship was also the head of the Jedi Temple. Talk about a conflict of interest there. During the New Sith Wars, the Jedi would essentially take over the military by creating the Army of Light, and they also would hold positions at all levels within the Republic. This is where the Ruusan Reformation comes in. You guys probably have heard me talk a lot about this one single piece of policy that sets up the entire galaxy for the Skywalker saga. Well, the Ruusan Reformation, the whole demilitarization of the Republic, occurred because the Jedi had gotten involved at every level of the Republic's government, and this was seen as a huge problem. And so, as you can see, the Jedi throughout Republic history were really the only individuals allowed to cross the imaginary line of what was legal or not. The moral authority that has been granted to the Jedi for more than 25,000 years for the Republic completely changed how this organization viewed themselves and created a culture of arrogance and elitism. Now, during the last period of the Jedi Order's reign, Grandmaster Yoda would be in charge of the Jedi Council. Yoda was actually a terrific pick for the role. He was one of the wisest members of the Jedi Order, and since he's been a part of the Order for centuries, he's actually had an active role in training every little youngling that's entered the Jedi Order's halls. And this means he has a direct connection to almost every Jedi and has somehow shaped their development. Now, having Yoda in this position of power for hundreds of years has a lot of positives, but it also has a lot of problems too. If you take a look at the Jedi Council, there are only 12 members there, and 5 of those members are permanent. The rest are elected by the Jedi Council. There's no democratic vote. This is essentially an oligarchy. And because those in power are the ones who choose the new members, it's very difficult for outside voices or opinions to be heard. Now, in all fairness, Yoda would choose individuals like Qui-Gon Jinn to join the Order because of how unorthodox his viewpoint was. And it wasn't because Qui-Gon Jinn was a rabble-rouser or an organizer and threatening to rebel against the Jedi with significant backing. The Jedi was not afraid of his influence. Yoda actually genuinely wanted to see a different point of view enter the Jedi Council. It was a wise decision, but one that ultimately fell through. But here's the thing, there are plenty of unorthodox Jedi who could have probably sat on the Jedi Council. So why was Qui-Gon Jinn chosen? Well, I have a theory that the oligarchy in the Jedi Order runs like any oligarchy here in our world. When Jedi Masters get too old and need to find a replacement, they usually end up voting for the Jedi that they know. Which is why the Jedi Council, despite only having 12 members, is made up mostly of people who have existing relationships with one another, rather than being selected randomly amongst the larger Jedi population, which numbered in the tens of thousands. The Jedi don't really practice nepotism because they don't have children, usually. But in a lot of ways, the relationship between the Jedi and their master is like that of a parent and a child. The master passes on many lessons about life, fighting styles they might have picked up, and many other things. The master guides the Padawan through many of their life milestones. And so it's only natural that Yoda would choose someone like Dooku to sit on the council. Dooku was his former apprentice, and Qui-Gon Jinn was the apprentice of Dooku, and this most likely also helped convince Yoda that the man might be worthy. Obi-Wan Kenobi, another member of the council, was the apprentice of Qui-Gon Jinn, who himself belongs to the Yoda lineage of the Jedi. One could argue that it was also Yoda's influence that allowed Yaddle, the only other Jedi of his species at the time, to join the council, and later on, Yaddle's own apprentice, Oppo Rancis, would also ascend to the council. And so this kind of Jedi nepotism was rampant in the Jedi Council. In a previous video, we took a look at Mace Windu's own apprentice, Deepa Billaba. From the time the Naboo crisis started to the end of the Clone Wars, she occupied a seat in the Jedi Council and left it multiple times. Now, Deepa was a seriously skilled Jedi. She was one of the few individuals other than Mace Windu who mastered the Vapad style lightsaber combat. But Deepa was a troubled Jedi. She had serious reservations about the Jedi Order's role in the war. She found more comfort on the front lines battling. And she would suffer greatly during the campaign on Harun Kal. Deepa Billaba clearly wasn't at the stage where she was ready to be in the leadership and was quite proactive on the front. Now, I believe the real reason why Deepa Billaba joins and then leaves the High Council so many times is because Mace Windu actually wants his former apprentice on the council with him so that she can support his viewpoint. Mace Windu had other allies like Ki-Adi-Mundi, and they all viewed the Jedi needed to take the war more seriously and integrate themselves fully with the Grand Army of the Republic. Now, to be fair, the rest of the Jedi Council was made up of guys like Kit Fisto, Ceci Tin, and Plo Koon, and they were not really directly tied to any of the other Jedi Masters. They, however, were close acquaintances with Mace Windu. They kind of all grew up together, went on adventures together. This points to another fact, and that's that although the Jedi had thousands of members, it seems like there was a favorite group of individuals, you know, the boys, that handled a lot of the most pressing challenges the Jedi faced. And if you found yourself in that group, you know, the boys, you might also have more opportunities in the future to join the Jedi Council, if one of the boys make it there too. But still, this was not an efficient way to represent the opinions and thoughts of the entire Jedi Council. Instead, what you get is a group of like-minded individuals creating a faction within the Jedi Order that has a lot more power than any other group, which I think is one of the major problems with the Jedi Order. Especially when you consider that at the top of this little faction is Grand Master Yoda, and he's been in charge for such a long period of time. I mean, even the best rulers have maybe a decade at most before they start losing their shit. not. And that's because the key to longevity for any system is not finding the perfect solution, but accepting that balance is needed and that change is constantly needed to maintain that balance. You know, pass one policy and a few years later, you might need to pass a policy in a completely different direction. The Jedi's power wasn't that Yoda was malicious or even incompetent. He had just stayed in power for too long. And through very benign and seemingly harmless ways, he also surrounded himself with like-minded individuals that he not only shared many similar views with, but he even raised many of these individuals. Yoda's greatest failure was probably giving too much to the Jedi Order and making them rely on him too much and not protecting their organization from his own weaknesses and blind spots. And so there you have it, guys. Too much of anything, whether it's power or cookies, can always be a bad thing. You should always find balance in almost every asset of life, and that is how you find longevity. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, my name is Alan, reminding you that my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy. See you next time.